Thought of Mind is a series of several programs spanning different ages where you can actually reach in and adjust your operating system. What you're used to are all the contemporary ideas that you can go to a lecture, read a book, think happy thoughts, do something to change your nature in terms of being more motivated, staying fresher, more optimistic, more resilient. All the things that we want to do to have a happier, more fulfilling life. Well, the reality is you really know from the experience of reading this, that, and the other thing, going to this seminar, watching this lecture, that change is pretty difficult. And we'd like to explain to you why it's so very difficult, and why there's really only one way to do it, and we found it. So let's start with a little bit of discussion on the unconscious mind. It's been likened to an iceberg where you see a tiny fraction of the conscious mind and you know that lurking beneath the surface is the unconscious mind. Well, it's a nebulous thought, isn't it? I mean, Freud brought this to our consciousness, the late 19th century, and it has been being refined since then. Well, countless decades of brain study by scientists and physicians alike has yielded some information about the mind, but virtually nothing about the unconscious mind. We are complex animals, and as such, a lot of the needs that we have for self-regulation have been delegated to an autonomic nervous system, right? The nerves are so conditioned to respond that they don't need any input from you. They've got an internal guiding program to keep you in what's known as homeostasis, right? As an adult, you go for a run. You get your heart rate up to 150 beats per minute. You don't have to think about calming it down. It's going to calm down on its own, and it's going to get back to your homeostatic level, which may be somewhere between 60 and 80 beats a minute. Your blood pressure rises and falls, and it's regulated. Your temperature rises and falls, and it's regulated. There's kind of a series of thermostats in you, right, to go to a predetermined location, which is known as homeostasis, right, your holding position. This has two areas that we can explore in terms of the unconscious mind. For one, the physical aspect of the unconscious mind. We can't be riled for too long. We can't be in a constant state of arousal or anxiety or anger or any of the manifestations of emotions in their strongest. So there's that one aspect that something must regulate us emotionally. Well, what is an emotion? Well, let's kind of get into this subject a little bit. Right? Because we mix these ideas of emotions and feelings all the time. We think that they're synonymous, but they're not. An emotion is a call to action, right? An emotion is a call to action. And well, how does that work? Well, most of your life is done unconsciously. The things you do, you don't think about. You think about the novel things. Right? Running through your mind are repetitive things. You have to force your mind out of that groove to go into somewhat of a task positive mode, to focus your attention on something. Is it like a task at hand? But otherwise, you do everything routinely. Brush your teeth, comb your hair, shower, all of your personal grooming. Get in the car, start the car, drive the car. Go where you're going with very, 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 very little need for your frontal lobe, your conscious mind. This is all done unconsciously. Well, unconscious and conscious are two separate places in our book for very good reason. Okay, let's digress. Let's go back and say, okay, we are a complex animal. We've got an autonomic nervous system that regulates all of our physiological needs and brings us back to normal. What records the novel information that is new to your environment once it becomes repetitive? What does that mean? You could have been born in any of the continents, in any of the decades, in any of the eras, anywhere, and you were going to adapt or die. Well, part of that adaptation is to build your own source code, is to build upon the few instincts that we are born with, that we're imbued with, and to build an operating code to help you navigate through the present stage of life and hopefully successfully through to the next stage of life. But it happens like a blueprint for a house. Your parents' DNA combines to make you a unique entity, but you're not a blank slate, are you? No, the drafting board is not open. There's a blueprint there, and that is the genetic predispositions of your parents, which were the genetic predispositions of their parents, and then they modified them, hopefully to put a better adaptation algorithm in, so that once you get them, it's slightly more adapted. Well, what does this do? What does this blueprint do? Well, your mind is not some mysterious void. It is circuitry. It probably can't really be mapped in the way a printed circuit board can be mapped, but nonetheless, it is a physical circuitry. Well, that physical circuitry has a path laid in. The DNA from your parents drafts the circuitry of your brain, and it predisposes its likes and dislikes. Because everything in your life, every perception you have, every thought you have, every feeling you have is positive or negative. Nothing is neutral. This is called valence, and this is a judging of stimulus and thought and sensation that is coded, which has built your unconscious. So before you could speak, you were building a code to help you navigate successfully in the environment, in the culture, in the language, in the temperature that you're in. This is all stored at the deepest level of the architecture. So now we've got a blueprint. Its foundations are in. It's solid. The predispositions you receive from your parents are like cement. They can be chipped away at, but they're pretty entrenched. Well, then who raises you? The same parents who poured that foundation. So that the chances are that they're going to raise you up in exactly the same way that they've been predisposed to gravitate toward this and away from that, to be introverted or to be extroverted, to be open to new experience or not be open to new experience. This is not nebulous anymore. A watershed, state-of-the-art system has been derived over the last 30 or so years called the Big Five personality test. This is the foundation of what we do. Most people do not know who they are. They have a conscious self, which is a tiny fraction of who they are. They really live in fear of being triggered, which will express one of their emotions in too strong a fashion. Well, there's mindfulness. Well, you can pay attention to your thoughts. You can pay attention to your feelings. Okay. But once a spike is hit, once something really makes contact, your emotional self could care less about your cognition. You are going to be called to action. That action is called an emotion. If it's psychological, it is physiological. It is biological. It is chemical. Your brain is emoting 24/7, 365 and a quarter days every year. It never turns off. It never goes to sleep. Your subconscious mind is watching over you. It has a operating system which has been built through your perceptions in the foundation laid by your parents who successfully made you. Something worked. The species has continued. You laid upon that foundation the walls which your parents helped you raise, so that now you have a very fixed set of things that you are predisposed to gravitate to and gravitate away from. These are called the Big Five personality traits. You will actually come face to face with yourself. You will see yourself in terms of your emotional responses. That's who you are. So these Big Five are broken down into an acronym known as OCEAN. Openness, your intelligence, your openness to new ideas. Conscientiousness, which is the real winner. And this is dutifulness, industriousness, achievement, striving. Right? Basically, this one everyone wants more of. And so this is kind of a cardinal trait, and it has a corollary. But let's continue. Extroversion In the mid-40s, we came out with a continuum of extroversion, introversion. Now it's very well established. Extroversion has to do with, do you like people? Are you gregarious? Are you a risk taker? Can you have fun? I mean, to a certain extent, your ability to have fun is a measure of your extroversion. Agreeableness, are you a people pleaser, or are you willing to be independent? So in our book, agreeableness is colored yellow because it's dangerous. And usually, very agreeable people become floor mats. And then neuroticism, which is the corollary to conscientiousness. Neuroticism, it's dark. And it's something we'd all like to have less of. Neuroticism includes hostility, anger, and really it can be essentially described in one way, and that is an oversensitivity to negative stimulus. And this really goes a long way, doesn't it? I mean, if you break it down, because we navigate our lives by seeking positive stimulus and avoiding negative stimulus. So if you are overly focused, if you're overly preoccupied, if you're overly sensitive to receiving negative stimulus, it's going to impact your life, right? You're not going to deal with things in a way that's going to help you navigate contemporary society. So OCEAN is the acronym. These are broken down further into 6 facets per trait. You have some combination which makes you absolutely unique. So it's a scale, with 30 little measures here. Some people are born with a terrific hand where they're very conscientious, they're very open, their neuroticism is low, they're not too agreeable, and they are extroverted. We are all wired. We've all followed a path in proportion to our fundamental wiring. I mean, this may sound like determinism to you or fate. But take hope, because these things can be changed. You are wired to seek pleasure and comfort and emotional homeostasis, right? You don't want to be your emotional heart racing at 600 beats per minute. There has to be some kind of a stasis there where you can function through life. I mean, emotions are there to protect you, believe it or don't. That's their function. Right? Your body gets called into action, completely circumventing your conscious mind. Not consulting, completely overriding your conscious mind. Think of anger. You're triggered into a bout of anger. Well, you're gone. At that intersection, your conscious mind is flooded with chemicals, and it is absolutely not going to function. You may have thoughts in there, but they're really not rational. Your mind is focused on the object of your anger and dealing with it. It's sometimes called an amygdala hijack, where 20 minutes, you're gone. I mean, and hopefully you're not doing any damage. So emotions are in place to keep you alive. It doesn't mean to keep you polite. It doesn't mean to keep you socially acceptable. Your parents lay the foundation for this house, and then as you grow, the structure goes in. It's framed out. The walls, the windows. And then the roof goes on. That means the house is complete by age 7. You are substantially who you are by age 7. But you have to know this reality, because trying to reconfigure this foundation, this perpetually practiced, rehearsed, entrenched, codified, solidified neural network, trying to change that is like rain falling on the roof of the structure of your emotional self. But what we are dealing with now is a way to reach in to your operating code